she broke the record that no one thought possible. A 19-year-old janitor had just shattered the legendary SEAL sniper standard on her very first attempt. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on the private military testing facility, creating heat waves that danced across the dusty landscape. Elite Navy SEALs had gathered for what many considered impossible, hitting a target from 3.1 miles away. The atmosphere crackled with tension and anticipation as these highly trained soldiers prepared their equipment with meticulous care. June Callahan pushed her cleaning cart across the perimeter of the firing range, her baggy overalls hanging loosely on her 19-year-old frame. The janitor kept her head down, methodically moving between groups of soldiers and scientists who barely acknowledged her presence. When they did notice, it was with dismissive glances or poorly concealed smirks. "Hey, cleaning lady," called one of the SEALs, his voice carrying across the range. "Make sure you dust the target when you're done. Might be the only way anyone touches it today." Laughter rippled through the crowd as June continued her work, seemingly unfazed. She maneuvered her cart closer to the firing line, ostensibly to collect discarded water bottles and trash. The soldiers were too focused on their impossible challenge to pay her much attention now. As the latest attempt ended in frustration, June paused near an unused rifle resting on a support stand. Without ceremony, she set aside her cleaning supplies and approached the weapon. The few who noticed fell silent, curious about what the young woman was doing. "Hey, that's not a mop, sweetheart," someone called out, triggering another wave of chuckles. June ignored them, her hands moving with surprising confidence over the precision rifle. She adjusted the scope with surgical precision, her fingers making minute calibrations that reflected years of intimate knowledge. The laughter died down as the observers noticed her unexpected expertise. In one fluid motion, she positioned herself behind the weapon, inhaled deeply, and squeezed the trigger. The crack echoed across the desert landscape. Seconds passed. Then, through high-powered spotting scopes, observers witnessed the impossible. The distant target erupted in a perfect hit, 3.1 miles away. Complete silence fell over the previously boisterous crowd. June Callahan stood up calmly, methodically wiping down the rifle with a cloth from her pocket before returning it to its stand. Her face remained impassive, betraying no emotion or satisfaction at what she'd just accomplished. Looking around at the slack-jawed expressions of the elite soldiers and scientific personnel, she finally broke the silence with a question that would soon become legendary on the base. "Anyone got a broom?" she asked quietly. "I think I made a mess over there." The morning after June Callahan's impossible shot, the base hummed with electric tension. In the ballistics lab, a senior engineer hunched over computer screens, reviewing high-speed footage of yesterday's event, frame by frame. His colleagues had dismissed it as luck, but 20 years of experience told him otherwise. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, adjusting his glasses. The calculations required for that distance, accounting for wind speed, Coriolis effect, bullet drop, and atmospheric density, would challenge their most advanced targeting systems. Yet somehow, a teenage janitor had made these adjustments instinctively, with equipment designed for targets less than half that distance. The engineer printed his findings and locked them in his desk drawer. This wasn't just talent, it was something else entirely. Something that made him deeply uneasy. In the mess hall, June sat alone, methodically arranging her food in perfect symmetry before eating. She could feel the stares burning into her back, hear the whispers that fell silent whenever she turned around. The young woman kept her eyes down, focusing on the predictable patterns of her meal rather than the unpredictable humans around her. "That's her," a SEAL whispered to his teammate, the janitor who outshot Hawkins. "No way that wasn't staged," his friend replied, loud enough for June to hear. "Probably some PR stunt for recruitment." Omar, washing dishes behind the counter, caught June's eye and offered a sympathetic smile. Unlike the others, the aspiring physicist seemed genuinely impressed rather than threatened by her skill. By afternoon, June's cleaning rounds brought her to the officers' corridor, where she became involuntarily privy to their heated debate. "We need to know if she's been trained," a stern voice insisted. "Nobody picks up a rifle for the first time and hits at 3 miles. Background check shows nothing special," another replied. "Grandfather was military, but she's never even registered for a hunting license." June's hand tightened around her mop handle. They were digging into her past already. Later, as she emptied trash bins near the firing range, 2 snipers deliberately blocked her path. "So what's your secret, Callahan?" the taller one asked, arms crossed. "Some kind of savant? Or maybe Grandpa taught you more than just how to clean toilets?" June sidestepped them without responding, her face a careful mask hiding the storm beneath. She'd known this would happen. It was why she'd fought the impulse to touch that rifle in the first place. Now the questions would never stop, and neither would the scrutiny. That night, as she scrubbed the floors of an empty corridor, June noticed a security camera slowly pivoting to follow her movements. The message was clear. She was being watched. The janitor was now the most interesting person on the entire base. June Callahan scrubbed the floor of the officers' mess hall with methodical precision, moving her mop in perfect, measured strokes. 3 days had passed since the shot, yet the whispers followed her everywhere. She could feel eyes tracking her movements across the base, analyzing her every gesture as if searching for clues. "Just like your grandfather," a passing lieutenant had muttered that morning. The janitor pretended not to hear, but those 4 words had pierced her carefully constructed armor. Her grandfather had been legendary at this very facility, a ballistics instructor whose calculations had revolutionized long-distance marksmanship. Until the day everything fell apart. The military had accused him of falsifying test results, claiming his breakthrough methods were impossible. The disgrace had killed him as surely as any bullet. Now June worked the same floors he once strode confidently across, hiding her inherited genius behind a cleaning cart. She adjusted her mop with the same precise movements she'd used on the rifle scope, her hands betraying her lineage with every motion. "The janitor girl is in Sector 4, she overheard from a passing group of engineers. "Think she'll clean up another record today?" June kept her eyes down, focusing on the rhythmic swish of the mop. Her obsessive attention to detail, the way she measured cleaning solution to the milliliter, how she counted strokes under her breath, had once seemed merely eccentric. Now these behaviors marked her as something else entirely. In the locker room that evening, she found her personal items had been rummaged through. Nothing was missing, but everything had been examined. The intrusion felt like a violation, yet she said nothing. Complaining would only draw more attention. That night in her sparse dormitory room, June pulled out a worn photograph from beneath her mattress. Her grandfather stood tall in his instructor's uniform, pride evident in his stance. She traced the outline of his face with her finger. "They're watching me now," she whispered to the image, "just like they watched you." Her cell phone buzzed with another message from a reporter seeking an interview. The 19th today. June deleted it without reading. Fame was a trap she refused to fall into. The next morning, she arrived at work 30 minutes early, as always. The base was quieter then, allowing her precious moments of solitude before the scrutiny began anew. As she collected her cleaning supplies, the ballistics engineer who had analyzed her shot approached. "We need to talk about what you did," he said quietly. June gripped her mop handle tighter, knuckles whitening. "There's nothing to discuss. I got lucky." The engineer's expression made it clear he didn't believe her. Nobody did. And that terrified her more than any accusation ever could. June Callahan stood rigid in the commander's office, her calloused hands clasped behind her back as 3 stern-faced officers studied her like a peculiar specimen. The base commander, a silver-haired man with calculating eyes, slid a folder across his polished desk. "We'd like to offer you a position, Miss Callahan." Our Advanced Ballistics Research Division has expressed particular interest in your abilities. June's stomach tightened. As what exactly, sir? A research subject, replied the woman beside him, a lieutenant colonel with a clipboard. Your shot defied several established parameters. We need to understand how. The 19-year-old janitor felt her throat constrict. They weren't offering her a job. They wanted to dissect her skill, hook her up to machines, study her like some lab rat. The prospect sent cold shivers down her spine, memories of her grandfather's warnings echoing in her mind. I appreciate the offer, but I'm happy with my current position, June replied, her voice carefully neutral despite the anger bubbling beneath. The third officer leaned forward. This isn't really a request, Callahan. National security interests are at stake. June met his gaze unflinchingly. Then I'll need time to consider. Outside, pushing her cleaning cart down the sterile hallway, she allowed herself a moment of panic. The military wouldn't simply forget what they'd witnessed. Her grandfather's old friend had arranged this janitorial position specifically because it was invisible, a perfect cover that granted her access to nearly every corner of the facility. As she mopped the floor outside the weapons research lab, June realized the irony of her situation. The very job meant to keep her hidden now positioned her at the nexus of classified research and elite training. Scientists discussed ballistic coefficients behind glass walls while she emptied their trash bins. SEALs debated tactical approaches in break rooms as she refilled paper towel dispensers. Omar, her fellow maintenance worker, sidled up beside her. They called you in, didn't they? He whispered, pretending to check a light fixture. June nodded almost imperceptibly. Be careful, the aspiring physicist murmured. I've seen people disappear into those research programs. That night in her sparse dormitory room, June stared at the ceiling, weighing her options. The military could force her compliance if they wanted. Yet something about their hesitation suggested uncertainty, perhaps even fear of what she represented. Her grandfather had always said knowledge was power, but he'd never mentioned how dangerous it was to be the knowledge others wanted to possess. June closed her eyes, knowing that whatever choice she made would irreversibly alter her path forward. June Callahan's life imploded 48 hours after her impossible shot. Someone had captured the moment on their smartphone, the janitor with the mop and bucket casually picking up a rifle and making history. By sunrise, the grainy footage had millions of views. Janitor outguns elite forces, screamed the headlines. June's face appeared everywhere, on news tickers, morning shows, and social media feeds. Conspiracy theories multiplied faster than she could track them. Some claimed she was a secret military experiment. Others insisted she was the product of a classified super soldier program. The most persistent theory suggested she was her grandfather's protege, trained since childhood for this very moment. June pulled her cap lower as she slipped through the base's service entrance. 3 reporters were already camped outside the main gate. She'd received 17 interview requests before breakfast, and her dormitory phone rang constantly until she unplugged it. There she is! A voice called out as June ducked into the maintenance corridor. She quickened her pace, pushing her cleaning cart ahead like a shield. 2 officers she'd never spoken to suddenly wanted to chat. The young woman nodded politely, but kept moving. In the cafeteria, conversation stopped when she entered. Omar, her dishwasher friend, slid a tray across to her with a sympathetic smile. The internet is going crazy about you, he whispered. Someone started a fan page. It has 30,000 followers already. June stared at her food. I just want to do my job. But anonymity had become impossible. That afternoon, a military recruiter cornered her between shifts, offering specialized training and a substantial signing bonus. 2 hours later, a defense contractor left a business card with an eye-watering salary figure scribbled on the back. The base commander finally ordered security to escort June between buildings after a news helicopter circled overhead. She caught soldiers practicing her stance when they thought no one was watching. That night, June sat alone in her sparse dormitory room, scrolling through the endless commentary about her life. Strangers dissected her technique, her background, her potential. They questioned her motives, her training, her very existence. Some called her a fraud. Others named her a prodigy. "They don't even know me," she whispered to the empty room. When her phone buzzed with another unknown number, June almost ignored it. On impulse, she answered. "Is it true?" asked a gruff voice. "Did you really make that shot?" June hesitated, feeling the weight of the world's expectations pressing down. "Yes," she finally admitted, "but I never wanted any of this." "Too late," the caller replied. "The world has found you now." The retired sniper moved with the deliberate calm of a man who had spent decades calculating wind patterns and heartbeats. He found June Callahan scrubbing floors in the East Wing, far from the chaos of reporters camped at the base entrance. "You hold your breath on the exhale, not the inhale," he said without introduction. "Nobody teaches that anymore. Nobody except your grandfather." June froze, mop suspended mid-stroke. She straightened slowly, studying the weathered face of the stranger. His eyes carried the 1,000-yard stare she recognized from her grandfather's old photographs. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, resuming her cleaning with practiced indifference. The veteran chuckled. "That's exactly what he would say. I watched your footage 17 times. The way you adjust for spin drift before elevation, that's pure Callahan methodology. Classified stuff they only taught us during Operation Longshot in '82. June's rhythm faltered for just a moment. She'd learned those calculations from handwritten notes hidden in the lining of her grandfather's old shooting jacket. "Who are you?" she finally asked. "Marcus Reed. Your grandfather saved my life in Kabul before you were born." He leaned against the wall, watching her work. "What they're saying about him, the falsified results, the disgrace, it's all smoke." The young janitor stopped, her knuckles white around the mop handle. "Then why didn't anyone defend him?" "Because what he was really working on scared people with stars on their shoulders." Marcus lowered his voice. "Ballistic calculations that could neutralize any countermeasure. Methods that made satellite tracking obsolete." June's heart hammered against her ribs. Her grandfather had died alone, reputation in tatters, while she was still learning algebra. "They're watching you now," Marcus continued. "Same people who buried him. Your shot wasn't just impressive, it was impossible by conventional standards. You've got his gift." "It wasn't a gift," June countered. "It was geometry and physics." Marcus smiled sadly. "That's what he said too. Listen carefully. There's a consortium that's been waiting for someone like you. They'll offer you everything. Money, recognition, redemption for your grandfather's name." "And what's wrong with that?" she challenged. "Because what they really want is what's in your head. The analog methods that can't be hacked or tracked." He tapped his temple. "Be careful who you trust, including me." As Marcus turned to leave, June called after him. "Why tell me this?" He paused at the doorway. "Because I owe him. And because they're already moving pieces into position around you." June was mopping the corridor outside the officers' mess when they found her. 3 men in tailored suits that screamed private sector, moving with the confident stride of former military. They didn't introduce themselves, simply asked if she could spare 5 minutes. "I'm on the clock," June Callahan replied, continuing her methodical sweeping pattern without looking up. "Your supervisor has already approved this conversation," said the tallest one, sliding a business card toward her. "Meridian Defense Consultants." In a sparse conference room that smelled of industrial cleaner, they laid out their proposition. Meridian represented a consortium of private military contractors with deep government connections. They wanted June to compete in an exclusive international sniper challenge under their banner. "Why would I do that?" she asked, fingers unconsciously tracing patterns on the table surface. calculating angles and trajectories even in this moment of tension. The man with salt and pepper hair leaned forward. "Because we can clear your grandfather's name." June's hand froze mid-motion. They had her attention now. "We have access to classified ballistics records from his era. Documents that would prove his testing methods were legitimate. His reputation could be restored posthumously." The young janitor studied their faces, searching for deception. "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" "Publicity. Contracts. A 19-year-old cleaning staff prodigy breaking records would make quite the marketing story. The defense industry loves an underdog." June wasn't naive. "You want to weaponize my story? We want to invest in exceptional talent." The third man countered smoothly. "Your grandfather understood the value of precision. He would have wanted you to use your gift." That struck a nerve. June stood up, gripping her mop handle tightly. "Don't pretend to know what he would have wanted." "The competition is in 3 months," the tall one continued, unfazed. "All expenses covered. Win or lose, we'll release the documents clearing your grandfather's name." As they left, Omar found her still standing in the conference room. The dishwasher leaned against the doorframe, concern etched on his face. "Those suits looked serious," he said quietly. "They want to use me," June replied. "Everyone will," Omar shrugged. "Question is, can you use them back?" That night, June stared at the ceiling of her sparse dormitory. The consortium's offer echoed in her mind. She could finally vindicate her grandfather, but at what cost? The stakes were clearly higher than a simple shooting competition. These people didn't make offers without calculating every possible outcome. Dawn found her still awake, having made her decision. She would accept their offer, but on her terms. June Callahan might be a janitor, but she was nobody's weapon. June found the first puzzle tucked beneath her dorm room door, a folded paper containing ballistic equations with deliberate errors. The next appeared inside her cleaning cart, trajectory calculations that, when solved, revealed GPS coordinates. Each morning brought a new mathematical riddle, each more complex than the last. "Someone's testing me," June whispered to Omar as they sat in the base cafeteria. The young dishwasher glanced nervously around the room. "Or leading you somewhere," he replied, wiping condensation from his glasses. "These aren't random. The formulas, they're old school, pre-digital." June nodded. Her grandfather had taught similar methods, calculations that didn't rely on computers or modern ballistic software. Analog thinking in a digital age. The coordinates led her to an abandoned storage facility at the edge of the Nevada base. With trembling hands, June pried open a rusted ventilation shaft and reached inside. Her fingers brushed against leather-bound journals, 3 of them, wrapped in waterproof material. That night, under the dim light of her desk lamp, June opened the first journal. The pages were filled with her grandfather's meticulous handwriting, detailed diagrams of bullet trajectories, wind compensation tables, and notes in a code she didn't recognize. Some pages contained pressed flowers or photographs of mountain ranges with angles carefully marked. "What were you hiding?" she murmured, tracing the diagrams with her fingertip. The journals revealed a man obsessed with precision, but also haunted. Between calculations were cryptic warnings. "Trust no digital system. They're watching the satellites. Remember Kandahar." June stayed awake until dawn, absorbing her grandfather's legacy. These weren't just shooting techniques. They were survival strategies for operating outside conventional systems. When she finally slept, her dreams were filled with numbers and trajectories. The mysterious woman appeared 3 days later, watching June from across the mess hall. Tall and angular, with a surgical scar visible along her jawline, she carried herself with military precision. Their eyes met briefly before the stranger vanished into the crowd. "I think I'm being followed," June told Omar the next day. "The puzzles, the journals, someone wants you to know something," he said, his voice low. "But why not just tell you directly?" June closed her grandfather's journal. "Because some secrets get people killed." That night, she found a final note under her pillow. Your grandfather wasn't falsifying results. He was hiding them. Now they're watching you, too. June clutched the journals to her chest, understanding at last that they were both her greatest asset and her greatest danger. The knowledge within them connected her to a legacy far more complex and dangerous than she had imagined. The warm spring air carried the scent of salt water as June Callahan stepped onto the massive vessel anchored in international waters. She clutched her duffel bag tightly, feeling distinctly out of place among the sleek, uniformed figures that strode confidently across the deck. This floating coliseum, half-luxury cruise ship, half-military installation, would host the most prestigious marksmanship event in the world. "Contestants to the main hall," announced a voice over the loudspeaker, crisp and authoritative. June followed the stream of competitors, her work boots clunking awkwardly against the polished floor. The main hall gleamed with opulence, crystal chandeliers, mahogany panels, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the endless ocean. Military officials in dress uniforms mingled with corporate sponsors in tailored suits, champagne flutes in hand. "Welcome to the 34th International Precision Challenge," declared a silver-haired admiral at the podium. 24 competitors, 16 nations, 1 champion. As introductions began, June scanned the room. These weren't just soldiers. They were legends. Russian Special Forces operators with ice-cold eyes, British SAS veterans. June turned to face an elderly man with a weathered face and calculating eyes. Colonel Marcus Harrington, her grandfather's most notorious rival during the Cold War. "You recognize me?" she asked, tensing. "Those hands," the colonel replied, nodding toward her calloused fingers. Calvin had the same ones, steady as bedrock. His smile didn't reach his eyes, though he lacked your theatrical flair. Before June could respond, she noticed other competitors watching their exchange. A South Korean man, Lou, according to his aim tag, studied her with undisguised skepticism. 2 French marksmen whispered behind their hands, occasionally glancing her way. "They're all wondering the same thing," Harrington continued, leaning closer. "Are you a genuine prodigy, or just a convenient pawn in someone else's game?" June straightened her shoulders. "I guess they'll find out tomorrow." "Indeed they will," the colonel replied. "But remember, your grandfather never made it past the 3rd round with me. Family traditions tend to persist." As he walked away, June felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Her outsider status couldn't have been clearer if she'd still been pushing her cleaning cart. Yet beneath their scrutiny lay something else, uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, June recognized her only advantage. The competition's early rounds unfolded on the ship's specially designed deck, where June Callahan found herself isolated among elite marksmen who viewed her with a mixture of contempt and wariness. During a particularly challenging wind exercise, she noticed an older competitor struggling to steady his rifle, his hands betraying the telltale tremors of arthritis. "Your breathing's all wrong," the grizzled veteran muttered when June approached him later. "Got the shot, but your technique'll fail you when conditions worsen." Despite his gruff demeanor, his eyes held decades of experience. Over lukewarm coffee in the ship's mess hall, the veteran demonstrated proper diaphragmatic breathing techniques. "Control your heartbeat first," he explained, placing weathered fingers against his chest. "The rifle is just an extension." June absorbed his wisdom hungrily. In return, she sketched complex trajectory calculations on napkins, showing him how to compensate for his physical limitations with mathematical precision. "My grandfather used to say, 'The wind doesn't care about your arthritis,'" she offered quietly. "But geometry never lies." Their unlikely alliance drew suspicious glances from other competitors. The veteran didn't care. "Been watching these hotshots for years," he confided. "None of them understand what you do instinctively." Back in her cramped cabin, June's smartphone buzzed with an encrypted message from Omar. The dishwasher had been her only friend at the Nevada base. Their friendship forged during late nights when she'd clean the kitchen while he finished his shifts. "Got into their scoring system," his message read. "They're tracking more than accuracy. They're monitoring your breathing patterns, heart rate, even pupil dilation." June smiled. Despite being thousands of miles away, Omar had become her eyes inside the digital infrastructure of the competition. The aspiring physicist had recognized her talent immediately, never questioning how a janitor could make impossible shots. "Watch your back," he warned in another message. "Someone's accessing your profile every night at 3 a.m. This information proved invaluable as June advanced through the rankings. While other competitors relied on cutting-edge technology, she combined the veteran's old-school techniques with Omar's intelligence. Their support formed a protective bubble around her in an environment where everyone else seemed to be waiting for her to fail. "You remind me of someone," the veteran admitted, after watching her adjust for a crosswind without electronic assistance. "Someone who understood that this isn't about weapons, it's about physics and human limitation." June nodded, knowing he was one of the few who saw her as more than an anomaly or a threat. In a competition designed to isolate and intimidate, these unexpected connections had become her greatest advantage, and perhaps her only real allies in the dangerous game unfolding around her. The morning sun glinted off the competition range as June Callahan stepped to the firing line for the second round. Competitors had studied her technique from yesterday's performance, analyzing every nuance of her right-handed stance. The atmosphere crackled with tension as spectators leaned forward in anticipation. June surveyed the course with practiced calm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The target today was positioned at an awkward angle, partially obscured by a simulated crosswind generator. She could feel eyes boring into her back, particularly those of Lou, the South Korean math prodigy who had scored just 2 points below her in the opening round. "Callahan, you're up," announced the range officer. Without hesitation, June shouldered her rifle, but not as everyone expected. In one fluid motion, she switched the weapon to her left side, adjusting her stance with practiced ease. A murmur rippled through the crowd. "What is she doing?" Someone whispered loudly enough for June to hear. The grizzled veteran who had been mentoring her nodded slightly from the sidelines, the only person unsurprised by her tactical shift. They had discussed this possibility during their late-night training sessions. June inhaled deeply, using the breath control techniques her mentor had taught her. She made 3 micro-adjustments to her scope, calculations flowing through her mind as naturally as breathing. When she squeezed the trigger, the report echoed across the range, followed by stunned silence as the target registered a perfect hit. "Impossible," muttered one of the military observers. She switched dominant hands mid-competition. Lou's usual composed demeanor cracked momentarily, revealing genuine surprise before his features hardened into renewed determination. The young mathematician approached June as she stepped away from the firing line. "Ambidextrous, an unexpected variable," he said, his accent clipping the words. "Your grandfather taught you this?" June tensed at the mention of her grandfather. "Some things you figure out yourself," she replied, cleaning her rifle with the same methodical precision she once applied to mopping floors. Omar caught her eye from where he stood with the support staff, giving her a subtle thumbs up. Their late-night hacking sessions had paid off. They'd discovered that several competitors had installed tracking software to analyze her dominant side techniques. By the end of the day, June's ambidextrous performance had rocketed her to the top of the leaderboard. Competitors who had dismissed the former janitor now regarded her with wary respect. Even the tournament organizers seemed unsettled, huddling in corners for hushed conversations. That evening, as June returned to her quarters, she found a note slipped under her door. In precise handwriting, it read, "Impressive adaptation. Tomorrow will test more than your hands." It was signed simply with the mathematical symbol for infinity, Lou's signature. The rivalry had officially begun. June Callahan stood at the railing of the ship, watching the moon's reflection dance across the dark water. The competition had reached its halfway point, and she had surprised everyone, including herself, with her performance. But something felt off about the entire event. "Beautiful night," came a voice behind her. June turned to find Lou approaching, his calculated gaze betraying more than casual interest. Too beautiful for what's really happening here, she replied cautiously. The South Korean competitor leaned against the railing. You know, don't you? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Know what? Lu slid a tablet toward her. On the screen was a classified document with schematics for something called Project Kingfisher. June's eyes widened as she scanned the details. Satellite targeting systems, autonomous decision matrices, and kill protocols. This competition isn't about trophies or records, Lu explained. They're harvesting our techniques, our adjustments, our instincts. Everything we do is being recorded and analyzed. June felt her stomach drop. For what? An AI-guided satellite strike system. Precision elimination from orbit. No human trigger puller required. Lu gestured toward the horizon. This shit is in international waters for a reason. What they're developing violates at least 3 major treaties. The young janitor's hands gripped the railing tightly. She thought of her grandfather's journals, his cryptic warnings about weaponized mathematics. This was exactly what he had fought against. The consortium running this includes 12 nations, all contributing black budget funds, Lu continued. Your country officially denies involvement, but they're here anyway, June finished, thinking of the military observers who watched her every move. Later that night, June called Omar from her secure line. The dishwasher-turned-hacker confirmed Lu's claims after digging through encrypted servers. It's worse than he told you, Omar said, his voice tense. The winner's neural patterns will be the baseline for the AI. You'll literally become the template for the next generation of warfare. June sat on her bunk, her grandfather's journal open beside her. She traced his handwritten formulas with her finger, understanding now why he had been silenced. He hadn't falsified results. He had refused to let his knowledge become a weapon. I thought I was just clearing his name, she whispered to herself. But this is bigger. The realization settled over her like a heavy cloak. June wasn't just competing for personal vindication anymore. The skills that had made her an outcast, her precision, her calculations, her instincts, were now the very things that could reshape modern warfare. She closed the journal and made her decision. She would continue the competition, but not for the reasons they expected. If she won, she wouldn't just reclaim her grandfather's legacy. She would control how her abilities were used. The sound was wrong. June Callahan knew it the moment she squeezed the trigger. Instead of the clean, controlled report she expected, her rifle made a hollow sputtering noise before jamming completely. 300 yards downrange, her target stood mockingly untouched. Equipment malfunction, announced the judge through the loudspeaker. Competitor has 30 minutes for inspection and repair before forfeit. June's hands moved methodically over the weapon, her face betraying nothing as competitors and officials watched. Inside, her mind raced. This wasn't normal wear or environmental failure. The firing pin had been deliberately filed down, just enough to function during testing, but fail under competition pressure. Someone did this, she whispered to Omar through her comms device. The dishwasher-turned-assistant was monitoring from a support area, analyzing performance data. Check the bolt carrier, he replied, voice tense. I noticed one of the technicians lingering near your station last night. June disassembled the rifle further, finding microscopic scoring marks on critical components. This wasn't random sabotage. Whoever did this understood exactly how she shot, knew her rhythms and preferences. Only someone on her own team would have that knowledge. The young woman glanced at the competition clock, 22 minutes remaining. Around her, other competitors pretended not to stare, but she felt their eyes. Lu, the South Korean math prodigy, watched with particular interest from 2 lanes over. I can't fix this, June admitted, a rare concession that tasted bitter on her tongue. She reached into her pocket, fingers brushing against the worn ledger of her grandfather's journal. The pages contained hand-drawn diagrams of old-school ballistic calculations, analog methods from before computers dominated the field. Methods that couldn't be hacked or sabotaged. "I need my backup," she told Omar. "But it's not calibrated for this distance," he protested. "Doesn't matter. I'll do it manually." When the replacement rifle arrived, June ignored the digital scope entirely. Instead, she calculated windage and elevation using her grandfather's formulas, making adjustments based on feel and instinct rather than technology. With 4 minutes remaining, she settled into position. The rifle felt wrong in her hands, heavier, less responsive, but June blocked out the discomfort. She took 3 measured breaths, just as the grizzled veteran had taught her. "Trust nothing but yourself," she whispered, her grandfather's words becoming her mantra. When June fired, the round found its mark perfectly. The crowd murmured in disbelief as she calmly packed up her equipment, face impassive despite the storm brewing inside her. Someone on her team wanted her to fail. Someone she'd trusted had betrayed her. As she walked off the firing line, June's eyes scanned the faces of her support crew, wondering which one had tried to destroy everything she'd worked for. Trust had become a luxury she could no longer afford. The shadow moved like water in darkness, materializing beside June as she calibrated her rifle for tomorrow's round. June's hands froze mid-adjustment, her peripheral vision catching the silhouette she'd glimpsed repeatedly throughout the competition. "You have his hands," the woman said, her voice carrying the weight of decades. Same meticulous movements, same obsessive precision. June Callahan turned slowly, facing the stranger who'd been leaving ballistics puzzles outside her door. The woman was older, perhaps 50, with eyes that held the flat, evaluating gaze of someone who'd spent years looking through scopes. "Who are you?" June asked, though part of her already knew. "Alexandra Reeves. Your grandfather trained me 27 years ago." She circled June like a predator. "I was his best student until he decided some knowledge shouldn't exist." The pieces clicked together in June's mind. "You're the one who testified against him." Alexandra's laugh was brittle. "I told the truth. Your grandfather developed targeting systems that could predict civilian movement patterns. When he realized how they'd be used, he sabotaged his own work." Her fingers traced the barrel of June's rifle. "He destroyed careers, mine included." "He saved lives," June countered, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "He betrayed everything we built." Alexandra's composure cracked. "And now here you are, his little prodigy, carrying on his legacy without understanding the consequences." June's hands tightened around her weapon. "What do you want from me?" "To finish what he started." Alexandra pulled out a small device. "This tournament isn't about sport. It's about acquiring targeting algorithms for autonomous weapons. Your grandfather knew this technology would remove human conscience from warfare. He died trying to stop it." The revelation hit June like physical force. Her grandfather hadn't falsified results. He deliberately introduced flaws to prevent the technology from working. "I've been watching you," Alexandra continued, "testing you with those puzzles. You're good, better than he was, but you're also naive. They're using you to perfect what he tried to destroy." June felt sick. "Why tell me this now?" "Because tomorrow you face the AI." Alexandra's eyes held something between hatred and respect. "And I need to know if you're truly his granddaughter. Will you win at any cost? Or will you understand that sometimes the only victory is refusing to play?" She disappeared as silently as she'd arrived, leaving June alone with an impossible choice and the devastating knowledge that her grandfather's disgrace had been his greatest act of courage. The international waters that had initially promised neutrality now churned with diplomatic storms. June Callahan's uncanny performance had inadvertently triggered Article 7 of the Non-Proliferation of Autonomous Weapons Treaty, which the United States had ratified just 8 months prior. The competition's true nature, a thinly veiled weapons development program was now impossible to ignore. The United States government categorically disavows any knowledge of or connection to civilian contractor June Callahan, announced a stern-faced State Department official on every major network. Her participation was unauthorized and does not reflect U.S. military doctrine or policy. June watched the broadcast from the cramped quarters of her ship cabin, her face illuminated by the cold glow of her device. The 19-year-old janitor had become an international incident overnight. Omar had managed to hack into the ship's communication system, warning her through an encrypted message that both Chinese and Russian intelligence officers had boarded the vessel during the night. "They're calling you a military asset," the grizzled veteran told her during their clandestine meeting in the ship's galley. His arthritic hands trembled slightly as he passed her a small envelope. "This is a new identity. Take it and disappear after the next round." June slid the envelope back across the table. "I'm not running." "They'll kill you, girl," he hissed, leaning forward. "Or worse, they'll use you." "They've been using me since day one," she replied, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "I'm finishing what my grandfather started." Later that evening, June found Lou sitting alone on the observation deck, calculating wind patterns with remarkable precision. "Your government has abandoned you," the South Korean said without looking up. "Mine has offered me double my original contract to extract your methods." June leaned against the railing. "And what did you tell them?" "That some things cannot be extracted." A rare smile crossed Lou's face. "They wouldn't understand." By morning, satellite photos of the competition vessel had leaked to international media. 3 nations had formally protested the event, while defense contractors scrambled to distance themselves from the controversy. June found herself in an impossible position, disowned by her country, hunted by others, with nowhere to go but forward. As she prepared her equipment for the championship round, June discovered a small note tucked inside her rifle case. "Finish the shot. I'll handle the rest." It was signed with the same symbol her grandfather used in his journals, a small, perfect circle. The janitor who had once been invisible to everyone on the military base was now the most watched person in the world, and she was about to face her most dangerous opponent yet. The stage was set for the championship round. June Callahan stood alone at the firing platform, her weathered cleaning uniform replaced with the tournament's standard-issue gear. The crowd had fallen into an expectant hush when the announcer's voice crackled through the speakers. "For our final competition, contestant Callahan will face the Atlas 7. A sleek, gunmetal gray apparatus emerged from the opposite end of the range. No human operator, no breathing competitor, just an unmanned drone with an integrated rifle system that pivoted with mechanical precision." "What is this?" June whispered to the grizzled veteran who stood at the sidelines. "They didn't tell you?" The old man's face darkened. "It's their new toy, artificial intelligence. Military's been working on it for years." As June studied the machine, a sickening realization washed over her. The way it calibrated, the micro-adjustments it made, they were familiar. Too familiar. "They used my technique," she muttered, hands suddenly cold against her rifle. "From the viral video." Omar approached from behind, voice low and urgent. "I hacked into their system last night. The AI was programmed with data harvested from your shot at the base. They've been analyzing your every move since day one." June felt her stomach drop. She wasn't just a contestant, she had been bait. Her improbable success, her grandfather's techniques, all of it harvested to perfect their machine. The tournament wasn't about finding the best marksman. It was about proving their AI could outperform even the most exceptional human. Lou appeared beside her, uncharacteristically solemn. "You know what this means, yes? If you win, you threaten billions in defense contracts. If you lose, you validate their technology. Either way, "I was never meant to walk away from this," June replied, the weight of the situation settling on her shoulders. The South Korean competitor nodded grimly. "To them, you are already obsolete." Just a stepping stone to the next software update, June gripped her rifle tighter, watching the drone's optical sensors track her movements. Her grandfather's voice seemed to whisper from the pages of his journals. "They'll always try to replace what they can't control." The countdown began. June closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of everything: her grandfather's disgrace, her unexpected fame, the betrayals, and the few genuine connections she'd made along the way. When she opened them again, her gaze was steel. They had taken her shot, her technique, her very essence, and fed it to a machine. But they had missed something crucial, something no algorithm could replicate. "Let's see if they programmed you to improvise," she whispered to the drone as she stepped up to the firing line. June stared at the AI drone through her scope, her mind racing. The satellite guidance system had one critical vulnerability: a dependency on real-time atmospheric data. Her grandfather's journals had detailed similar systems from decades ago, primitive compared to this one, but built on the same fundamental principles. "They've programmed it with your techniques," Omar whispered through her earpiece. "The AI is predicting your every move." The janitor's hands remained steady as she made a series of minute adjustments to her rifle. Unlike the machine, she wasn't relying on digital calculations. June was channeling generations of analog knowledge, the kind that couldn't be hacked, corrupted, or predicted by algorithms. "I need to introduce an anomaly," she muttered, recalling a passage from her grandfather's writings. "Something the system can't account for." The crowd fell silent as June abandoned the standard firing position. Instead of following competition protocol, she shifted her body at an unusual angle, creating a stance that defied conventional ballistics. The AI, programmed to counter textbook techniques, couldn't adapt to her improvisation. "What is she doing?" Lou whispered from the sidelines, leaning forward with reluctant fascination. June calculated wind vectors in her head, factoring in elevation, humidity, and the Earth's rotation, all without digital assistance. Her grandfather had taught that true mastery came not from technology, but from understanding the invisible forces that shaped a bullet's journey. "System anomaly detected," announced the AI operator, panic evident in his voice. Recalibrating, but June was already squeezing the trigger. Her round traveled an impossible arc, defying conventional trajectories. The bullet struck not just the target, but the drone's external sensor array, the very component feeding data to the satellite. For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, the AI system crashed, its guidance protocols thrown into chaos by the unexpected data interruption. The machine had been defeated by human intuition. The crowd erupted. Veterans and engineers alike stood speechless as the 19-year-old set down her rifle with the same quiet efficiency she'd use when returning a mop to its bucket. "Impossible," the grizzled veteran breathed, his weathered face breaking into a rare smile. "She didn't just hit the target, she broke the whole damn system." Military officials rushed to contain the situation, but it was too late. Every camera had captured the moment when analog defeated digital, when human judgment trumped artificial intelligence. June's eyes remained fixed on the distant target. In that moment, she wasn't thinking about victory or vindication. She was thinking of her grandfather, whose disgraced theories about ballistic anomalies had just been proven correct on the world stage. "That," she whispered to herself, "was for you." The crowd fell silent as June Callahan approached the firing line for her final shot. The tournament officials had done everything possible to ensure her failure. Rigged equipment, tampered ammunition, even manipulated weather data. But they had overlooked one crucial detail: the contents of her cleaning cart. With steady hands, June retrieved a small device that had accompanied her through countless hours of mopping floors and scrubbing toilets. The laser level, originally designed to ensure perfectly aligned floor tiles, had been meticulously modified during late nights in her dormitory. Omar had helped her reprogram its internal components while the veteran sniper had taught her how to incorporate it into her shooting stance. "What is that?" Lou whispered from the adjacent station, his arrogance momentarily replaced by genuine curiosity. "Just a janitor's tool," June replied without looking up. She mounted the device to her rifle's rail system with practiced efficiency. The laser projection created a perfect grid pattern that revealed what the tournament organizers had tried to hide. The target was moving in a predetermined pattern, designed to be tracked only by the AI systems they were promoting. The ballistics engineer who had first analyzed her shot at the Nevada base stood among the officials, his face paling as he realized what she was doing. June caught his eye and gave a slight nod. He knew. They all knew now. The modified laser level compensated for the atmospheric distortion that had been artificially introduced into the competition space. As June made her calculations, she thought of her grandfather's journals, of the analog methods that couldn't be hacked or corrupted by digital manipulation. "System interference detected," announced the automated voice of the competition's monitoring system. "Competitor 18, please remove unauthorized equipment." June ignored the warning. The cleaning tool that had granted her access to every restricted area of the military facility was now granting her access to the truth. She adjusted her stance, feeling the weight of the rifle settle against her shoulder. "Final warning," the system voice intoned. The young woman took a deep breath, just as the veteran had taught her. She squeezed the trigger. The shot echoed across the competition venue. On the distant display screen, the target registered a perfect hit, and simultaneously, the monitoring systems flickered and revealed the manipulation algorithms they had been running. Chaos erupted as officials scrambled to shut down the displays. But it was too late. Every competitor, every sponsor, every journalist had seen the truth. The janitor had not only hit an impossible target, she had cleaned house, exposing the corruption at the heart of the competition. June calmly disassembled her rifle, returned the laser level to her pocket, and stood tall amidst the pandemonium she had created. The cameras flashed like gunfire as June Callahan stood at the podium, her face illuminated by their harsh light. She gripped the edges with calloused hands, the same hands that had just rewritten history. Representatives from major sporting brands hovered nearby, contracts ready. Military recruiters waited with offers of commissions and specialized training programs. The media clamored for statements, for sound bites, for anything they could extract from the 19-year-old who had humbled both men and machines. "No," June said simply, her voice steady despite the tremor in her fingers. "I'm not interested in endorsements, or medals, or becoming anyone's weapon." The crowd fell silent, pens hovering over notepads. The janitor brushed a strand of hair from her face, a gesture that betrayed her youth despite the ancient weariness in her eyes. "Everyone wants to know why I did this," she continued. "It wasn't about breaking records or embarrassing the military. It wasn't even about winning." Her voice caught slightly. "It was about proving that my grandfather wasn't a fraud." For the first time since that fateful day in the Nevada desert, June's carefully constructed walls began to crumble. Tears welled in her eyes as she spoke of the man who had taught her everything, not just about ballistics and trajectory, but about integrity. "He died with his reputation in tatters," she said, "accused of falsifying results that weren't possible with current technology. But he wasn't lying. He was just ahead of his time." A reporter asked about her future plans. The question made her smile, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "I'm not a soldier. I'm not a weapon to be aimed," she replied. "I'm just someone who wanted the truth to matter more than convenience." Omar watched from the back of the room, nodding encouragement when her eyes found his. The grizzled veteran who had become her unlikely mentor stood nearby, arms crossed but pride evident in his stance. "My grandfather used to say that precision isn't about destroying targets," June said, her voice stronger now. "It's about understanding the space between you and your goal, about respecting distance and variables." As the press conference ended, June stepped away from the podium, ignoring the shouted questions that followed. For the first time since she'd picked up that rifle on the testing range, she felt unburdened. Not by victory or vindication, but by finally allowing herself to be seen, not as the janitor who made an impossible shot, but as a young woman searching for belonging in a world that had taken everything from her. The truth, like a well-placed round, had finally found its mark. 6 months after the competition, June Callahan stood in front of a renovated brick building in a quiet Ohio suburb. The sign above the entrance read, "Callahan Institute for Precision Sciences," honoring the grandfather whose name had been cleared through her efforts. What had once been an abandoned community center now housed state-of-the-art ballistics labs, classrooms, and a modest shooting range. June ran her fingers over the freshly painted door where she had engraved her institute's motto, "Learn to aim, never be a weapon." The words represented everything she had fought for, the difference between precision as a skill and violence as an identity. Inside, Omar was setting up computer stations in what would become the physics lab. He had left his dishwashing job at the base to become the institute's technology director, his enthusiasm for teaching matching his brilliance with systems. "First class starts Monday," he said, grinning at June. 23 students already enrolled, all on full scholarship. The young woman nodded, still finding it strange to be addressed as Director Callahan instead of being handed a mop. The prize money had been substantial, but she had stretched every dollar, ensuring that underprivileged youth could access education that elite military programs typically reserved for recruits. In the adjacent room, the grizzled veteran who had mentored her during the competition was demonstrating breath control techniques to 2 staff members. His arthritis had worsened, but his mind remained sharp. He had been the first person June called when planning the curriculum. "We're teaching them physics, engineering, and ethics," June explained to a local reporter who had come to cover the opening. "Precision isn't just about hitting targets. It's about understanding consequences, about responsibility." She had received offers from weapons manufacturers, military recruiters, and even Hollywood producers. June had declined them all. This institute, teaching young people from backgrounds like hers to harness their potential without being exploited, was the only legacy she wanted. Later that evening, as sunset painted the building in golden light, June found herself alone in the main hall. On the wall hung a single framed photograph, her grandfather in his instructor uniform, smiling beside a young recruit. Beside it, in a simple frame, was the certificate officially retracting all allegations against him. June placed her hand on the cool glass. "We did it," she whispered. The janitor, who had shocked the world with a single shot, had transformed her 15 minutes of fame into something lasting. Tomorrow, young minds would fill these halls, learning that precision could build rather than destroy. And perhaps someday, one of them would break a record, not measured in distance or destruction, but in lives improved and potential realized.